Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Aylwood and today we're taking a look at Abe's Oddysee, an old school PS1 classic that I've made plenty of videos on already, all except an actual review. So as always, let us answer the ultimate question, is it worth your time? So, Abe's Oddysee is a single/multiplayer 2D sci-fi adventure puzzle platformer. Set on the unusual planet of Oddworld, you take on the role of a star employee working for the biggest meat production factory on the planet. You'll be helping out your fellow employees, removing your superiors from service, all in attempts to escape the factory after discovering some particularly unsettling innovations. So aesthetically, I honestly didn't know how I was going to talk about the visuals of this game at first, because it's hard to describe exactly what's going on here. There are no 3D polygons in sight, yet the character animations are brilliant. The background designs are far too detailed for any kind of pixel art use, and the 3D cutscenes often transition seamlessly straight into the interactive foregrounds, something you never saw on the PS1 console. Colours used are mostly dark yet quite pale throughout, giving industrial areas a definite crude, cold feel to them, while also giving the more natural environments more of a dry, desolate feel, which you'll find from other titles seems to match the world's geography perfectly. The only lighting effects present are the pretty standard underfoot shadows and a couple of foreground lights which get the job done fine. Other noteworthy effects include the many different explosions, the lighting effects from the Shriekal form, and of course Abe's iconic chanting ability, all of which provided incredible visual immersion back in the day, especially when you see the various body parts scatter across the screen when you blow up a character. Brilliant. The textures and detail used are very impressive. The incredible use of shading, memorable background objects, and the indistinguishable textures for back then were phenomenal. Most background designs are so detailed they look like paint-in screenshots simply converted into a less detailed format in order to save as much disk space as possible, which is likely exactly what they did. Same goes for the cutscenes and character designs. In order to get such a brilliantly detailed animation for each unit, they were modeled in full 3D first, before being injected directly into this 2D world, which even after conversion has still resulted in very good quality sprites. The UI is completely non-existent, just the way we like it. Same goes for the ground clutter. You do get the odd water bucket and cloth around the factory, or the occasional large rock while outside, both of which are perfectly fine. You would expect walkways to be as clear as possible, and clear they are. The only other screens are the extremely bog standard pause menu and the quite creative main menu screen, both of which are more than well placed for the design of the game. Overall, an incredible visual standard that for back in the 90s truly bedazzled the PlayStation community. The OSTs in Abe's Oddysee are some of the most impressive, unique, yet underrated soundtracks in gaming. I have no doubt a lot of people who've played Abe's Oddysee didn't actually notice the many subtle twists they made to how each soundtrack interacts with one another. For a start, each soundtrack has been created using very futuristic FX sounds, with the combination of a few orchestrated sounds to give the game a more cinematic feel, especially during cutscenes. There is a strong yet subtle focus on bass and synth effects on most tracks, a bold, in-your-face beat that is easily separated from the background, and a simple, memorable main melody on each OST that sticks in your head with ease. They have even created extremely realistic background sounds relevant to your current location, and actually integrate these sounds into the soundtracks themselves. And that's not even the best part. What makes Abe's Oddysee soundtrack so unique over so many other games, even today, is the chase themes. When you're being chased by something or someone, the track seems to do one of three things: repeat itself at its most intense moment, change between two different soundtracks, or add a fast, single, booming sound to increase tension. But honestly, I don't have a clue what formula they've used to get this effect, but either way, it creates some seriously impressive tension. Everything else sound related, like footsteps, background sounds, and the various mechanical sounds are extremely realistic and were likely based on real-life sound effects made in a studio. The voice acting is just as top quality and really created an incredibly immersive experience experience for such a limited console. Overall, a standard setting sound quality that truly defines the meaning of the word unique. Now for the gameplay. So Abe's Oddysee doesn't have any difficulty options to choose from before you play. It is what it is whether you like it or not, just like every good game should be. The lore of the game is quite unusual due to its somewhat crude sci-fi setting, but as mentioned, you play as Abe, one of many Mudokon slaves forced to work for a large meat production factory known as Rupture Farms. Due to the very harsh decline in animals harvested by the factory, Malak, the company's chief executive, reveals a brand new meat product in order to boost sales: Mudokon Pops. Being a Mudokon himself, Abe naturally decides to escape the plant and unintentionally discovers his destiny on the way. When you first start the game, you're shown a very informative, intense, to the point cutscene that introduces you to the game's plot brilliantly. As with most cutscenes, you then transition straight into the actual stage, then immediately take control of your character and play. As you've probably guessed, the character controls are pretty straightforward. You have your standard movement controls as you'd expect from any platformer, with the addition of jumping, hoisting, crouching, running, sneaking, rolling, throwing, and chanting. You can create ability combinations such as rolling into a jump or running into a roll, all of which are used to navigate the various platforming challenges while also ensuring your survival against the many different hostiles in your way. Throwing and chanting are your only two abilities that can actually damage opponents. Throughout the world you will find stones, meat, or bombs, all of which can be thrown to trigger traps, bait wildlife, blow up enemies, and more. Chanting, however, is by far the most iconic ability in the game and is actually feared by other hostile races in-game in the form of mechanical chant suppressors and sligs verbally shouting the word help when they hear it. Abe can use his chant ability to mind control sligs, control certain objects, and open bird portals. A very big part of this game's puzzle aspect would be impossible without the chant ability and the additional commands that come with it. The general objective of the game is to simply progress through an area, avoid platforming hazards, figure out puzzles, discover secrets, remove or relocate hostiles, utilize your communication skills, and if you're really good, save your fellow Mudokon workers by leading them to bird portals. You can communicate with your fellow employees using commands like hello, follow me, and wait to lead them to safety. Keep in mind, however, that both you and your Mudokon friends will almost always get one shot by any form of damage received throughout the whole game, which, take my word for it, definitely keeps things interesting. You receive in-game assistance in the form of overhead scrolling text screens, or you can touch certain devices located around the game for some on-screen information. If you're lucky enough to discover a secret, you'll often notice a Mudokon smiley face painted on the wall to indicate an increased difficulty level for your current location. You have areas with both foreground and background aspects to them that provide interesting twists to the gameplay. You can receive temporary buffs to your chant ability with devastating effects. If there are no chant suppressors around, you can mind control sligs and use their abilities such as shooting, beating, opening security doors, and commanding slogs. While in your standard Abe form, you can also activate pattern and timed bombs, pull levers, jump into wells. You can utilize your communication commands for funny results, and much more. The characters themselves, as mentioned, have been created with such a high level of quality, not just visually, but also how they react with Abe and each other. Paramites will act timid and run away until there's two or more. Scrabs will fight to the death when they notice each other. Sligs will often talk to each other, shoot and chase Abe depending on the situation, all of which combined with the many different abilities at Abe's disposal really creates a complete, unforgettable, and iconic gaming experience. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? Knowing the limited disk space and performance of the PS1 console, this game is both visually and mechanically incredible for its time. It has remained a true cult classic since release and has undoubtedly stood the test of time. I'm going to give this game a 5-star or 92 out of 100. No matter how old you are, whether you're in your 60s or 8 years old, if you take the time to sit down and really experience this game, I am confident that you will enjoy it. Due to the basic stage designs, nature of each character, and the incredibly simple mechanics, you can really take your time, wander around, and backtrack with no feeling of pressure whatsoever. The fact that pretty much any damage received one-shots you can take a bit of getting used to, but is more than fair in my opinion, especially when considering the game's respawn system. The communication aspect of the game provided an incredible, unique twist to the platforming experience. The very rich history of the Mudokons is told told in the form of brief text riddles and subtle visual assets, and the cutscenes for back in the 90s were fucking brilliant. When I was a kid, someone bought me a PlayStation magazine which came with a very small book of cheats. One of the cheats allowed you to play any cutscene you wanted from a very long list, and damn, I spent so much time watching just the cutscenes, it's nuts. If I were to nitpick, however, I've always found that the transition stages between the Mosaic Lines area and either the Paramite or Scrab temples felt a bit rushed in terms of level design and challenge provided. But other than that, I honestly cannot fault it. Definitely a must-play platformer in my opinion, and a welcomed addition to my 5-star Hall of Fame. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I should be reviewing each week. I'll likely review the sequel to Oddysee at some point, but that won't be for a while yet since I need to also release reviews on newer games and not just the old school classics. But don't worry, I plan to cover them all eventually anyway. But as always, all the best guys, take care.